series for our state and local government customers. This is our first of 3 webinars that will take place at the same time for 3 Wednesdays in a row, including today. The next couple are on May 28th and June 4th. Starting with today's topic of Introduction to Amazon Web Services, next week's topic will focus on getting started with AWS, and closing this 3-part series with taking a deep dive into how to easily deploy AWS into your environment with a couple of interesting workloads, use cases we will explore. My name is Sanjay Asnani, who is coordinator of the event. John Heppner, sitting with me, AWS account manager, will be the lead presenter today. And Mark Korver, who will be assisting us. He's a senior solution architect with AWS. Will be handling questions and answers later. A couple of housekeeping items. All attendees will remain in listen-only mode, but can ask questions throughout the presentation by typing questions in the question console that you would see on your GoToWebinar screen. Our extended team would write responses back to individuals, and we may also pick some of the questions from the pool later on, for the benefit of the broader group. John will get started in a couple of minutes and most likely wrap up in 35 to 40 minutes. We'll then open it up for Q&A, where you can actually ask questions. As some folks may have this question on the mind already, so I would answer it preemptively. We are recording this webinar, and it will be posted on AWS YouTube channel as well. All participants today will receive an email with those links, as well as some other links of interest. Also, the slide deck would go on SlideShare, so that link will be included as well. So without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to John Heppner.
Thank you very much, Sanjay. Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks very much for joining us for the Amazon Web Services webinar for series for public sector. Very happy to be presenting to you today. Let's take a look at today's agenda. We'll go through why government customers are choosing AWS, what kinds of workloads government customers are using AWS for, and how government customers are getting started with AWS. So throughout the presentation, please use the question feature of GoToWebinar to ask a question. And we'll spend the last 10 minutes or so going through your questions. So this is a simple view of the set of services that AWS offers. At the core is the compute, storage, and data services that are at the heart of our offering. When we then surround these offerings with a range of supporting components like management tools, networking services, and application services. All these capabilities are hosted within our global data center footprint that allows you to consume services without having to build out your own facilities or procure hardware equipment. So let's take a look at the AWS global infrastructure. The cloud isn't just 1 or 2 regions around the world. The Amazon cloud exists in 10 regions around the world with 26 availability zones. And within those, in addition, we have 51 edge locations, which puts the data closer to the end user that's consuming that data. As a customer, you have the ability to spin up an environment in any of these 10 regions around the world in minutes, including our newest region in China, which is available in limited preview as we're accepting customers and launching them into that region. If I were to zoom into a particular region, this is US East region, you would see that a region is comprised of at least 2 availability zones. Each availability zone runs on its own physically distinct independent infrastructure and is engineered to be highly reliable. So common points of failures like generators and cooling equipment are not shared across availability zones. And additionally, they are physically separate, such that even an extremely uncommon disaster like a fire, tornado, flooding would only affect a single availability zone. The pace of innovation is accelerating at AWS. And we aren't just innovating for the sake of innovation. Yes, we certainly have our own ideas and direction on where we want to take the services, but we are taking direct feedback from our customers and adding those adding that direct feedback into existing and new services. It's the virtuous cycle of innovation. We take that feedback from customers, we add that into the services, we get more customers, we can add more service and lower cost, the virtuous cycle of innovation. So note that this slide is the list of services that were launched in a given year, and you can see that 2014 we have not had a service launch yet. We've had 153 enhancements to our existing services. AWS has a lot of customers. We have more than 800 government agencies and 3,000 education institutions leveraging our services. So these customers range from NASA Jet Propulsion Laboratory to the city of Melbourne in Australia, among others. We'll be highlighting some of these interesting use cases from our partners and public sector customers later in the presentation. AWS is solving problems for big organizations across many verticals and geographies. And we are extremely proud of our customer list and happy to know that we're providing good outcomes and better results for some of the best firms in the world. This is the list of the 2014 Premier Tier Partners for AWS. The AWS Premier Consulting Partner designation highlights the top consulting partners globally that have really distinguished themselves by investing significantly in their practice on AWS, growing their AWS business, and providing exceptional customer service, helping a large number of customers to run their applications on AWS. So we've announced these 22 partners as Premier Partners for 2014. On the left-hand side of this slide is a sample of AWS consulting partners that have really gone and distinguished themselves in government practice and investing in their government and growing their government business on AWS. On the right-hand side are a side of sample AWS partners who built applications that run on AWS. And those applications are specific to the needs of customers in the public sector. Workday is a human capital management and financial management software as a service. You can think HR and ERP. Citizen Global is an application that provides law enforcement, schools, and universities a platform for collecting, managing, analyzing, and distributing on-the-scene video and photo information. CityWorks, a local government asset and workflow management application with a GIS-centric approach. ArcGIS Online is that software as a service from the GIS standard in the industry, ESRI. And that enables you to run ArcGIS server and applications in the cloud. SmartGov is an affordable permit automation platform for permitting, inspections, code enforcement, and licensing. What you see here is Gartner's most recent Magic Quadrant for the infrastructure as a service. AWS has been named the leader for 3 years in a row, and you can see that now AWS is now further out and up to the right, with the other 14 vendors clustered around the middle. And what's very interesting is that Gartner noted that AWS has more than 5 times the compute capacity than the aggregate total of the other 14 providers. So now that we've had a quick overview of AWS, let's look at why governments are choosing AWS to run their diverse workloads. Right out of the gate, security is always something that comes up with the customers that we're talking to. And customers who've made the move to AWS, it's because AWS is architected for government security requirements. So you might have questions about security in the cloud, but our biggest and most conservative customers have found that we're able to meet their security requirements, and often we can provide a better security profile than what they can deliver internally. The AWS cloud infrastructure has been designed and managed in alignment with regulations and standards and best practices, including HIPAA and ISO 27001. Recently, we announced AWS CloudTrail, which is a service that records API calls made on your AWS account and delivers log files to an S3 bucket. CloudTrail provides increased visibility into AWS user activity that occurs within an AWS account and allows you to track changes that were made to those AWS resources. This allows enterprises and government customers to run comprehensive security analysis and also better manage their governance and compliance efforts. So in addition to the security piece that is critically important, the number one reason that we're seeing government customers move to AWS Cloud is it gives them increased agility. The ability to serve their constituents and communities more effectively and efficiently, easier access to infrastructure, react faster to public needs, and overcome constrained IT budgets. Cost is certainly a conversation starter when it comes to the cloud. And there are really many pieces to this cost conversation when it comes to AWS and your own infrastructure. The first advantage you get in the cloud is that you don't have to lay out capital expense for hardware and infrastructure before you know the actual demand. In essence, you can convert your capital expense into variable expense. And then that variable expense on AWS is lower than what most companies can do on their own because AWS runs at a massive scale, and we pass that scale to customers in the form of lower pricing. There are multiple pricing models in AWS so that you can optimize your spend depending on what your workload's requirements actually are. And the more you use AWS, the less your costs are. We have tiered pricing, and for some customers doing large data center migrations, we have the ability to negotiate custom pricing to make those transitions cost effective. More and more, citizens are asking their municipal entities to be proactive and flexible with the services that they provide. However, if you ask an IT leader as to how long it takes to get a server through the process, to get a workload running, the typical time frame is 10 to 18 weeks. In the cloud, you can spin up thousands of servers in minutes and experiment quickly. If the experiment doesn't work out, you can spin those instances down and stop paying for them. This is a big difference from the old world. In the cloud, you can instantly spin up and down clusters, petabyte-sized data warehouses, and new production or development and test environments at a moment's notice. Everything changes with this kind of agility, and it enables entities to be more responsive to the needs of the citizens and internal customers. One of the great things about AWS is that you have 100% control of your data and you keep control of your intellectual property. So we're seeing a lot of our customers really do amazing things when they reduce the cost of experimentation. Or another way to think about that is reducing the cost of enabling your ability to have a rich test and dev environment. It moves IT into the role of being an enabler where business units and departments can launch a project quickly and inexpensively. It allows entities to take more chances on ideas and gives a shot at finding the right answer more quickly, as opposed to being limited by the costs of traditional IT acquisition. So now that we have a good context of the AWS value proposition for government, let's look at some interesting use cases for government that running on AWS. Enterprises are using AWS and government customers are using AWS for virtually running any workload. And some of the more prominent ones that we're seeing resonate with our government customers include development and test, storage and backup, disaster recovery, GIS workloads, we talked about that with ESRI, and running web and social applications. Let's look at some of these use cases right now. The first one we'll look at is the city of Asheville in North Carolina, where they, working with one of our partners, Cloud Velocity, deployed a pilot-light disaster recovery. I think all of us can relate to some of the issues that relates to having a traditional disaster recovery solution. A lot of organizations and public sector customers face the high fixed and CapEx costs as it relates to replicating their production environment. Uneven protection. We'd like to cover all of our applications, but we know we just can't do it. We have limited agility. Geographic proximity is certainly a concern. Are we across the street, across town, on the same floodplain? And we also have limited testing. One of the nice things, the outcomes that came out of this process with the City of Asheville, working with our partner Cloud Velocity, is that they were able to reduce their recovery time objective by 75%, taking that from 12 hours down to an astonishing 3 hours. They were able to extend their protection. They have not only their urgent mission-critical applications protected, but now their important apps as well. They've moved from across the street or 2 blocks away to a disaster recovery site in one of our regions on the West Coast. They also reduced their recovery point objective from basically going from each evening. Now they can do that to a point of 4 hours. And one of the really interesting things, they came back to us and said, we're able to have now an enterprise class DR solution without the complexity and cost of traditional DR. Douglas County is one of the largest counties in Nebraska, and they implemented an ESRI ArcGIS implementation. And a couple years ago, the GIS department started exploring replacement options for its on-premise web servers. And although the department focuses on GIS solutions for the county, all of the employees also have basic infrastructure experience. So the county's IT administrator said, sure, go out and try to find your own solution. And one of the 2 primary concerns that Douglas County wanted to make sure with this solution they were able to satisfy was enables them to focus on GIS projects and continue to use products from ESRI, those products that they were very comfortable using. And they're able to do that. With the strong partnership that AWS has with ESRI, and it's a long-standing partnership, they were able to do that and focus on those applications from ESRI, focus on GIS projects, and avoid that heavy lifting of procurement and installation of servers. Gives them flexibility and provides improved services more quickly to their internal and external customers. The next one we'll take a look at is a very interesting scenario with Citizen Global, one of our partners in the law enforcement space. So I'd like to take you back to about 1 year ago to a very important event that happened in our nation's history, and that was the Boston Marathon bombing. You can imagine the outpouring of citizen outreach as it relates to the massive amounts of video and pictures that were being handed to law enforcement officials. Literally, people were bringing hard drives into their offices. Here's my data, please look. Well, there was so much data that it crashed the servers. So AWS was working in conjunction with LA County Sheriff on some projects, and the sheriff there in charge of shared services reached out to us and to basically to the industry. It ended up being AWS and Citizen Global to partner on a solution that we call LEADER, which is a large-scale digital information repository for large-scale emergency events such as the Boston Marathon bombing. So this, you can see the link to the website there at the bottom. It's up and running and ready to go for at no cost to taxpayers. But the important piece, that's a great solution, but the important piece out of this is that Citizen Global took that platform that provides the ability to easily collect, manage, analyze, store and distribute video and photo images, and took that and has a pay-for service now directed at local law enforcement, police, sheriffs, etc. So great story here from Citizen Global. The last one we'll take a look at today is the City of Houston, Department of Public Works and Engineering. They have an application, we'll just call it the Drainage Utility Billing application. The City of Houston uses AWS to support a number of applications, including this drainage utility system that supports 600,000 customers and 30,000 online bill disputes on a monthly basis. So their infrastructure now supports 24 readings per day across these 400,000 customer accounts. It's a fairly large deployment. They've got data warehouses in the 3 terabyte range. They're supporting enterprise document management on SharePoint in the 5 terabyte range. One of the biggest problems that AWS solved for the City of Houston was the limited time to deliver, typically 3 months to get servers up and running. The other problem that AWS allowed them to solve was scalability. Oftentimes we find that we're either over or under provisioned, either not serving our customers well or over provisioned and overpaying for the infrastructure. They also needed to be PCI compliant because they're processing $60 million a month in credit card processing. The outcome here, able to do that in a low cost, being able to be scalable and fast delivery. And it's interesting in that they used virtual private VPC, virtual private cloud, to securely extend the City of Houston's data center, allowing their organization to effectively use the technology more effectively without provisioning and implementing the infrastructure. So now we'll transition into going over from an AWS Services Overview. The first ones we'll take a look at are the networking services. The virtual private cloud is the first one there, lets you provision logically isolated section of the AWS cloud where you can launch your AWS resources in a virtual network that you define. You have complete control over your virtual networking environment, including the selection of your own IP address range, creation of subnets, and configuration of your route tables and network gateways. With AWS Direct Connect, it makes it easy to establish a dedicated network connection from your premises to AWS. Using Direct Connect, you can establish a private connectivity between AWS and your data center, your office, or your co-location environment, oftentimes reducing your network costs and increasing your bandwidth throughput. Route 53 is a highly available and scalable domain name service. Route 53 is designed to be fast, easy to use, and cost-effective. It answers DNS queries with low latency by using a global network of DNS servers. Queries for your domain are automatically routed to the nearest DNS server and thus are answered with the best possible performance. The compute services here that you see, the first one of our flagship services, is Amazon EC2, or Elastic Compute Cloud. It's resizable compute capacity in the cloud. Elastic virtual servers in the cloud running Windows and Linux distributions. You're able to obtain and boot a new server in minutes. You can quickly scale up and down as your requirements change. The good thing about it is you pay only for the capacity that you use. The two other services there, auto-scaling and elastic load balance, are closely tied to your use of EC2. Auto-scaling allows you to scale your EC2 capacity up or down automatically according to conditions that you define. With auto-scaling, you can ensure that the number of EC2 instances you're using increase seamlessly during the demand spikes to maintain your performance, and also then decrease automatically when the demand subsides, minimizing your costs. ELB, Elastic Load Balancing, automatically distributes incoming application traffic across multiple EC2 instances. From a storage perspective, Elastic Block Store, EBS, provides block-level storage volumes for use with EC2 instances. EBS volumes are network attached and persist independently from the life of an instance. Amazon EBS provides highly available, highly reliable, predictable storage volumes that can be attached to a running EC2 instance and exposed as a device within the instance. S3. Amazon S3 is another one of our flagship services. It's one of the oldest services that we have. It's storage for the internet. Amazon S3 provides a simple web service interface that can be used to store and retrieve any amount of data at any time from anywhere on the web. And another good thing about AWS and S3 is you pay for only the data that is actually stored in S3. With Amazon Glacier, it's an extremely low-cost storage service that provides a secure and durable storage for data archiving and backup. With Glacier, customers can reliably store large or small amounts of data for as little as 1 penny per gigabyte per month, a significant savings compared to on-premise solutions. With Storage Gateway, it's a service that connects on-premise software appliance. It's an on-premise software appliance that connects seamlessly your organization and your on-premise IT environment with AWS's storage infrastructure like S3 and Glacier. From a database services perspective, Amazon RDS. It's a service that makes it easy to set up and operate and scale a relational database in the cloud. It provides a cost-efficient and resizable capacity while managing time-consuming database administration tasks are done by AWS. It frees you up to focus on your applications and your business. RDS gives you access to the capabilities of familiar relational database services like MySQL, Oracle, SQL Server for Microsoft, and our newest addition here is PostgreSQL. DynamoDB is a fast, fully managed NoSQL database service that makes it simple and cost-effective to store and retrieve any amount of data and serve any level of request traffic. It's because the data items are stored on solid-state drives and are replicated across 3 availability zones. ElastiCache is a web service that makes it easy to deploy and operate and scale an in-memory cache in the cloud. It provides, improves performance of web applications by allowing you to retrieve information from a fast-managed in-memory caching system. Some of the application services that we have. CloudFront. It's a content delivery web service. It integrates with other web services to give developers and businesses an easy way to distribute content to end users with low latency, high data transfer speeds with no commitments up front. You can use CloudFront to deliver your entire website, including dynamic and static and streaming content using that global edge of network locations that we talked about. Cloud Search is a fully managed service in AWS Cloud that makes it easy to set up, manage, and scale a search solution for your website and your applications. So Elastic Transcoder is one of our newer services. It's a media transcoding in the cloud. It is designed to be highly scalable, easy to use, and a cost-effective way to convert or transcode media files from source format into versions that will play back on devices such as smartphones, tablets, and PCs. Workspaces is a new service that was launched in 2013, desktop virtualization the AWS way. It was in limited preview, but is now available to all. It is a fully managed desktop computing service in AWS. It allows you to easily provision cloud-based desktops that allow end users to access documents, applications, and resources that they need with the device of their choice, including laptops, iPads, a Kindle Fire device, or Android tablets. So the next services are our big data service or our analytics services. The first one is Amazon EMR or Elastic MapReduce. EMR makes it easy to quickly and cost-effectively process vast amounts of data. EMR uses Hadoop, an open source framework to distribute your data and processing across a resizable cluster of EC2 instances that we manage. EMR is used for a variety of applications, including log analysis, web indexing, data warehousing, machine learning, just to name a few. Data pipeline. Web services allow you to reliably process and move data between different AWS compute and storage services. Amazon Redshift. Fast, fully managed, petabyte-scale data warehouse service that makes it simple and cost-effective to efficiently analyze all of your data using existing business intelligence tools. It's optimized for data sets ranging from a few hundred gigabytes to a petabyte type of a solution or more, and costs less than $1,000 per terabyte per year, a tenth of the cost of most traditional data warehousing solutions. A new service launched in 2013 is Kinesis. It's a fully managed service for real-time processing of streaming data at a massive scale. You can collect and process hundreds of terabytes of data per hour from hundreds of thousands of sources. Think about social media and bringing that data in to be able to distribute that into an EC2 environment, into Redshift to process that information. From a deployment standpoint, we have a number of different services that allow ease of deployment of the AWS environments. OpsWorks is an application management service that makes it easy for developer operations users to model and manage the entire application from load balancers to databases. You can start from templates for common technologies like Ruby, Node.js, PHP, and Java, or build your own using chef recipes to install software packages and perform any task that you can script. AWS CloudFormation, templates that are a foundation of our deployment service. An easy way to create and manage a collection of related AWS resources. You can use CloudFormation's sample templates or create your own templates to describe the AWS resources and any associated dependencies or parameters required to run your application. Elastic Beanstalk is an easy-to-use service for deploying and scaling web applications and services developed with popular programming languages such as Java, .NET, PHP, Python, and Ruby. From an administration standpoint, identity and account and access management enables you to securely control access to AWS services. Using IAM, you can create and manage AWS users and groups and use permissions to allow and deny their access to AWS resources. With CloudWatch, it provides monitoring for AWS cloud resources and the applications that customers run. CloudWatch monitors AWS resources such as EC2, RDS, and can also monitor custom metrics generated by a customer's applications and services. CloudTrail, we mentioned that before, is a service that records API calls for your account and delivers log files to you, typically into an S3 bucket. You can get a history of AWS API calls for your account, and that call history then is produced by CloudTrail, enables security analysis, resource change tracking, and compliance auditing. So in addition to all of those great services that we just went through, one of the reasons that folks and customers are moving to AWS is that we provide a comprehensive security capabilities that are provided. On the left-hand side, there is a rigorous set of processes and procedures that are followed by AWS to secure our physical aspects of our data centers in each one of our regions. Those physical assets are the concrete floor up to the hypervisor, networking components, all of the systems that support the operations in addition to the people and processes in place. As more and more enterprise customers come on board, that model is continually validated with them, and it's augmented. That whole process, the security piece, is augmented by our partners in the security space that add additional capabilities on top of the security information, that is provided by AWS. And all customers benefit right out of the gate once you launch your account. As time moves forward, stakeholders and citizens are more and more demanding and asking for additional value-added services from IT. So in order to be responsive, let IT concentrate on solving the needs of business and being more responsive to internal and external customers. So which is the better path? On-premise data center, is that really the future for government customers, or is it really moving to AWS, a cloud service where there's no upfront costs and 100% hundreds of new features? Well, many customers worry that there's only those two choices, either build a new private cloud or rip everything out and move to AWS. But the question is still fair. Why build additional data centers? The good news here is that the cloud isn't an all or nothing choice. We know that hybrid environments will continue to exist for a long time. And we know that a lot of our public sector customers will have on-premise data centers as well as cloud resources in AWS. And there is significant integration between both. We've spent the last couple of years making this integration simpler and easier. And this is an area where we will continue to spend significant resources moving forward. So here's what that looks like, the integration of AWS into your existing on-premise. Customers can extend their network into the cloud by using VPC, the virtual private cloud, creating public and private subnets. On-premise, customers have Active Directory. In the cloud, there's identity and access management. Backups then can be sent to the cloud using our storage gateway or one of our partner storage gateway products. There are many partners out there that help to get that single pane of glass from a management perspective, where you can manage both your cloud and your on-premise infrastructure. To summarize, AWS is a great fit for you if you're building new applications, facing a technology refresh during the next year, or planning to add capacity or growing your workloads, wanting a test dev environment. We have lots of ways for you, for a lot of great ways for you to get started. We have proof of concepts. Do it yourself through a partner that we work with quite extensively called Quick Labs. And they have 6 free AWS labs for those products listed there that you can go to at that link, run.quicklabs.com. And of course, we have a number of different partners that can help onboard you and get your applications moved over to AWS and do those assessments quickly. So 2 additional opportunities that I wanted to mention here. We just finished up an acceptance of a challenge where we were asking cities and counties to submit their unique use case for AWS. It was the City on a Cloud Innovation Challenge. We're very interested in working with each and every one of you to highlight your good work on AWS. We can highlight your good work on our website and through developing a case study. I would encourage you to go out to a City on a Cloud at that link there. Run applications for 24 hours that are designed for government-specific applications. Test it out. Run it for 24 hours. Give it a try. Also, I wanted to invite you and highlight the Symposium for Government Education and Nonprofits at the end of June back in Washington, D.C. The link to register for that symposium is listed on the screen. So with that, I wanted to thank you very much for joining today, and we're going to transition at this point in time to our question period. Thank you very much for the opportunity.
Thank you, John. Thank you, folks on the webinars for sticking with us. We would launch a couple of quick poll questions, if you wouldn't mind answering and looking at your screen, and you'll see the questions pop up. Please respond to them, as your feedback is very important in helping us drive the future webinars, the topics, and the kinds of questions that we're seeing come up. After we close the poll, we still have 20 more minutes left. We would dive right into the Q&A session, and I'm already seeing a bunch of questions that have popped up that are very interesting that I'd like to have John or Mark Korver actually comment on. So with that, let me launch the poll right now, coming your way. So please take a moment to answer the first question on your screen. I'll give it a few more seconds before I launch the second one. All right. And just your quick feedback on how this webinar went for you. So if you wouldn't mind answering the number 2 question on your screen now. All right, we're getting close, so please stick with us for a couple more seconds. All right, and I promise it's the final question. Okay, I'm going to close the poll now. I appreciate everybody's input. So let's kind of dive into the Q&A session now. So I saw some good flow of questions coming in, and our folks were answering, but I'm going to pick up a few just to get it started. As other folks, send questions in, so please feel free to ask questions as we're also taking some of the questions here and answering. And we've got a panel of folks here who would actually answer, and I'll pick up a few as well for us to do broadcast here. So one of the questions came up is, government folks would have kind of restrictions on whether they can use credit cards for the AWS monthly usage. So is there a process that allows government POs to be used? John, would you take that?
I can take that. Yeah, absolutely. There is a process by which we can work with government customers to move them into an invoicing status, and we can go through a process to do that if they wanted to work directly with AWS. We also have the ability to work with a rich set of partners that are resellers of AWS services that have state contracts, that have nationally negotiated contracts that customers can leverage without a credit card.
Great. A couple other questions that came up. Let me ask this. So as a government customer, how do I acquire AWS? Could you please elaborate on contract vehicles and some of the resources that I can tap into?
So I just mentioned it on the answer to the last question. I think through our partners that have negotiated national contracts, that is certainly an avenue with folks like DLT that have really established a business relationship with AWS that can serve the needs of government customers. We also have nationally recognized contracts like WSCA that are signed typically at a state level that typically then would allow local entities to sign up underneath that and enjoy the large scale discounts as it relates to that.
Got it.
The other one that I mentioned is the NCPA, which is also a nationally negotiated contract, and there are some state contracts as well that we can leverage.
And one of the questions that's popping up, I noticed, is from hopefully somebody from law enforcement agencies. So what other law enforcement, John, you touched on that, what other law enforcement applications do we have related to evidence archiving and uploading pictures and crime scene photos? Could you?
I think it's more of applications that our partners are developing. There's a number of different partners that have on-body cameras that are using S3 to store that video. Evidence.com is another large customer of AWS. So there's a number, and I think we will see more and more companies build a business around leveraging AWS to serve the needs of evidence and the large scale and quantity of that type of information to evidence gathering.
Got it. And it seems we have some federal customers as well on the call. So could you maybe speak for a few seconds on, do we have any use cases and studies? You definitely presented some in your slide, but perhaps you can speak to a couple good federal case studies that folks can go and look up on our website.
Yeah, let's see. Let me think off the top of my head. Federal use case studies would be CDC, I think, so Center for Disease Control, Department of Agriculture. I'm trying to think of off the top of my head here. Other ones, NASA JPL is a huge one, and you think of all of the content that was distributed through the Curiosity landing on Mars. That was all distributed out through CloudFront and AWS resources.
Good, John. A couple of questions also came up related to interest in our Gov Cloud region. Would you be able to elaborate on that for a couple of seconds there?
Absolutely. So one of the regions of the 10 is Gov Cloud, and that provides additional ability for ITAR compliant workloads. If you're doing anything as it relates to the international trafficking in arms, if you have that set of compliances, then the Gov Cloud is certainly a way to do that. All of our regions within the United States are FISMA, are FedRAMP approved. With Gov Cloud, you can run FISMA moderate workloads because of the ability to have encrypted endpoints and U.S. persons that are managing that facility.
And folks, please feel free to go visit AWS.com, and if you go aws.amazon.com/case studies, you're going to see a bunch of state and local, federal, as well as education case studies highlighted there. So chances are you're going to find some of the use cases that are pertinent to your needs. A couple questions maybe for our technical specialists here in the room as well. So Mark, out of the 30 services AWS provides, as a new customer, just looking at cloud as kind of a possible way to move my IT infrastructure, could you recommend a few that I should look at first as I'm kind of going about evaluating AWS?
Sure. So this is Mark speaking. I'm a solutions architect at the state local government team. What I usually suggest to customers is that one of the first things they do after they get an AWS account is that they go to the Amazon Management Console and go to a service that's called IAM, Identity and Access Management Service. And what you should do there is, after you've logged in with your top-level credentials, go to IAM and create another user and create an administrative user. And having created that user, you should give that user administrative policy over your account. And once you've created that user, created a password for the user, you should log out and then log back in as an IAM user. And the idea there is you should put away those top-level keys and use the IAM user on a day-to-day basis. We have some customers, for example, that are literally put that top-level key or the login, and bring it to the bank, so to speak, right? Put it away. So that's number one, IAM. And so, once you do that, then I would go right back to our compute services, which is EC2, Elastic Compute Cloud. And then I would just play there. I'd discover how easy it is to fire up server instances of various operating system flavors, Windows, Linux, your choice. do a little discovery around having made a choice around compute type. You can add data to that compute. Play with that a little bit. And the main thing there is you can you have a free tier, but even without the free tier, if you just remember to turn the lights off, right? So when you're finished exploring, either before lunch or at the end of the day, just turn it off, and you can keep control of your costs. And if you keep the server types, the EC2 types small, we're talking, depending on what it is, it's on the order of 6 cents an hour for certain types of machines, right? So that's very important to remember. The benefit here is not that you can just turn them on, but maybe more importantly, you can turn them off, right? And so once you've gained some familiarity with that, and so how do you start, let's say, a Windows machine? How do you remote desktop into it, right? Probably the third service I would go and explore is our simple storage service, S3 for short. The primary reason there is, once you get familiarity with the system, you know how to turn virtual machines on and off. Probably the next thing you're going to ask is, or think about is, how do I get data up into the cloud? And S3 is the primary mechanism for you to do that. So once again, go to the S3 management interface on the console, learn how to upload data, download data. Note, for example, that when you upload data to S3, default, it's private. You're the only one who can see that data. If you right-click on an object or go into properties for the object, you can change the access control so that everybody on the planet can see the data. Learn those features, right? And then remember that. So typically when you look at S3 for the first time, you'd be doing that from your desktop. And what I always suggest to people is explore S3 from your desktop or wherever you're using the management console from. And then the next thing you should do is remote into, for example, that Windows instance, and note that in the Windows instance you can fire up a browser and you could be looking at the exact same management console but in the cloud. So the simple concept there is you can upload data, let's say from your notebook, wherever you are, and then you could be remoted into the EC2 console in the cloud. So in a sense, your workstation is in the cloud, and you can see the same objects. You kind of give and take data right there. So those are probably the top three.
Okay. Thank you, Mark. Another interesting question that's coming up is what type of support is included in the AWS Services contract? So I can speak to that quickly. By default, customers get the basic level of support. With this, you have access to our support forums. But we have multiple levels of premium support as well. So if you go visit aws.amazon.com/premium support, we recommend that customers start with business level support when they're getting started. With that level of support, you get access to phone, email, as well as chat support. And just to emphasize the point again, there is no long-term commitment with support as well, just like all our AWS services. So you can start and stop at any time. If you have further questions about support or even extending that to training, please feel free to reach out to John Hepner. I guess his email was mentioned before. Hepner@amazon.com.
Hepner J.
Hepner J.
On the slides.
On
the first slide. Yep.
And folks, please feel free to post questions. I am looking at the flow. Haven't seen any new ones come up, so we're about 6 minutes before closing this webinar. So if you guys have questions, please feel free to ask. We've already talked about case studies. So somebody was asking about any agencies deploying VDI. We're still kind of coming up with the case studies on that because it's a new offering. But as soon as we have case studies, they go up on that case study portal that I just mentioned.
Just on the VDI piece, in the use case that we mentioned today on city with the city of Houston, I remember I didn't clear that particular bullet. They have 500 workers that are leveraging workspaces today to increase their level of productivity in a managed desktop environment with workspaces.
So one question I have, Mark, for you, since we have a lot of government customers here around security. So AWS security compliance documentation talks about shared responsibility model. Could you elaborate on that so folks have a clarity on what it means?
Sure, I'd be happy to. So the basic concept is we take care of infrastructure. Practically what that means is that, we are talking about, we have many regions. In those regions we have many availability zones. You can think of them as data centers. Our job is to take care of everything from the concrete floor all the way up to the hypervisor. On top of the hypervisor is the operating system. The operating system and everything on top of the operating system is the customer's responsibility. And so, I was talking earlier about how you should go to, go to the EC2 management console, learn how to initialize and start up instances, remote into those instances. Once you're into the Windows operating system or you SSH into a Linux machine, it's your machine, it's your business logic, your space, it's your data. We don't attempt to control that. In fact, that's our business model. So you'll see that as you use a console, there's a point right before you deploy the EC2 instance that we will ask you what key do you want to use to deploy that instance. And we give you the facility to create keys in the environment, but we do not keep the private side of the key on our end. We ask you to download it and make sure that you put it, you keep it secure. And the idea there is when you deploy a machine with a certain key, you cannot log into that machine unless you have access to the private side of the key. So one thing important to remember is all of our services are all opt-in. You can decide what level to use. One of those, of course, is our support. And so you could, for example, call somebody from support and say, something within my application is not working. Can you please log into my machine and fix it for me? And our response will be, no, we can't do that. It's by design, right? So if you do in fact lose a key because of that shared responsibility model, you will need to, quite frankly, start over again. But the good news is it's not your hardware. It's all pay as you go. And so, you need to remember to keep the keys safely. But if you need to reboot or get another machine, you can do that within minutes.
Great. So we're about 3 minutes from closing this, but there are a couple of other interesting questions. So folks, if you still want to send us the questions, please feel free to send it to hefnerj@amazon.com. We'll get to them later after the webinar, and even the ones that are coming in now that we can't answer fully, we would call you and respond to them. But Mark, if you maybe want to take a couple minutes to go through last 2 questions. How do you link AWS administration with existing infrastructure Active Directory?
So we have a lot of good documentation about Active Directory, how to set up Active Directory in our environment as a standalone AD setup. We also have, as mentioned earlier, we have a whole service called Virtual Private Cloud that essentially allows you to extend your data center in a very private network topology way into our environment, including linking back into Active Directory services that reside in your environment. So I would, once again, I would suggest there's a very good white paper on that. I think that's fairly recent in conjunction with a bunch of other Microsoft-related software white papers, including things like SharePoint, et cetera, available on our system. And then, the one thing, like I was saying before, it's very inexpensive to do things like create, networks and explore that, including setting up AD-type infrastructure and environment.
Thank you, and we'll just take the last very quick one. How is the OS licensing, operating system licensing, handled with EC2? So basically with EC2, the price of the operating system is included in the hourly rate. That's the beauty of running your infrastructure on the cloud. And because of this, you'll notice that Windows machines are slightly higher in cost when compared to Linux machines. So folks, we're literally 1 minute away from closing this webinar down. So we appreciate your participation, spending your valuable 1 hour with us today. Please do join us next week at the same time, 1 p.m. Pacific on May 28th, and one following that on June 4th. The next one is going to be, a topic would be getting started with AWS, where you would experience a little bit more of the live demonstration of AWS. And the third one is going to be even a deeper dive with the topic being how to easily deploy AWS in your environment. So with that, thank you again for your participation. We look forward to seeing you next week. Thank you.
Thank you.